in the long paragraph just after the middle of the page. In the morning, the preacher goes in, delivers the sermon, everybody's, gets the willies about it. Later on in the day, in the afternoon, we're told there's a funeral. Black is appropriate. A black veil is maybe not for the preacher, but it's appropriate. He goes in, they've got the body in a casket. The casket is open, or the coffin, whichever it is open, and he leans over the casket. We're told to give his final farewell. About 6 lines down, 7 lines down from the beginning of that paragraph that begins that afternoon. We're told he bends over to take a last farewell of his deceased parishioner. As he stooped, the veil hung straight down from his forehead. So he bends over, the veil comes up like this, so he can see her face to face, even though, obviously she's dead. And we're told, so that if her eyelids had not been closed forever, the dead maiden might have seen his face. Could Mr. Hooper be fearful of her glance, that he so hastily caught back the black veil? So, when he bends over and the veil falls all the way open, like this, he very quickly pulls it back up. Strange behavior. A person watching the interview, that is, standing to the side, watches this, says, that the instant when the clergyman's features were disclosed, the corpse had slightly shuddered. So, when the veil falls all the way open, the body starts. Now, we know someone who has recently died, the body will twitch and move for a while. Even up to 24 hours later, gas will be expelled and things like that. We don't know how long this woman has been dead. Okay? Then we find out who the person was who saw this happen. A superstitious old woman. Okay, because she's superstitious, she believes in weird, odd things. Most people would say, that's it. She's a believer in weird things. All right? So he goes from the coffin, we're told, to the head of the staircase to make the funeral prayer. Tender, heart-dissolving prayer, full of sorrow, yet so imbued with celestial hopes, hopes for the future, the afterlife beyond. We're told that the music of a heavenly harp swept by the fingers of the dead seemed faintly to be heard among the saddest accents of the minister. It doesn't mean that literally. How do we know? Because the verb seemed is used. Seemed is a verb that indicates a condition contrary to fact. Donald Trump seems like a very humble person, right? Condition contrary to fact. Nobody, even Trump's most ardent supporters, would say that he's a humble person. Okay? So, the people tremble, we're told, though they but darkly, there's that word again, we've seen it multiple times already, though they but darkly understood him. That is, he's praying to God. The people hear him, but they don't really understand what he's saying. They understand some of it. St. Paul, I think it's in 1 Corinthians, says, now we see but through a glass darkly. And by word glass, he means these glasses, windows. Okay, so what's he saying by that? These things, the things we see through, not literally, he's talking metaphor, okay, are darkened. They're dirty. We don't see, hear clearly. Okay? on and says, but then, because he's talking about the resurrection, but then we will see face to face. And he's talking about God. After death, we'll see God as he is, and he will see us as we are. Okay? Face to face. Notice, face to face really means what? I'm not going to. If I were to come up to you and get in your face, what does that mean I see? I see everything about you clearly. There's nothing obscuring that vision. Paul says, here, there is something. Even if someone is right here, it's like there's a veil between us. Okay? So notice, his words are veiled to his audience. They don't completely understand. Okay? And this is what they don't really understand. When he prayed, this is what they but darkly understood, that when he prayed, they and himself and all mortal race, everything living, that's not just all humans, plants, animals, etc., might be ready as he trusted this young maiden had been. Now, this is implying just humanity, because we don't talk about animals and plants, getting ready to meet God when they die, so to speak. That they might be ready as he trusted this young maiden had been for the dreadful hour that should snatch the veil from their faces. So he actually refers to a veil in this prayer. And he says, oh God, let them all be ready for what's the dreadful hour that snatches the veil from our faces. What is that an allusion to? What is that referring to? Death. Got a little quote on my door, my office door. It's from Shakespeare's play Hamlet, which we'll read later on. And in it, it's from Act 5, play's nearly over. Hamlet's talking to a friend about an impending fencing match, like a sword match. It's all fun and games, supposedly, but Hamlet's got a queasy stomach. In other words, his gut's telling him, something's not right here. And his friend says, bow out of it. Don't do it. Hamlet said, nah, it's cool. If it not be now, it will be later. If it not be later, it will be now. What's the it? If I'm supposed to die now, fine. If I'm not supposed to die now, I will die later. If I'm not supposed to die later, I will die now. And then he says, the readiness is all. What does he mean? One should be ready for death at every moment of life. Pretty profound when you think about it, okay? That's what the minister is talking about, and the people don't understand. The bearers carry her body forth. They go down the street. They go to the funeral. Mr. Hooper walks behind. Someone turns around and looks at Mr. Hooper, and the person next to him said, why are you? I thought I saw her walking with him, hand in hand. That is, I thought I saw the dead girl walking alongside him. And the other one says, yeah, me too. Okay? That evening, there's a wedding. So they have a morning service and afternoon service. The afternoon service at this time is for the funeral. In the evening, they have a wedding. What do you not expect at a wedding? What do you not expect people to wear to a wedding? Black. Why? Black clothing is symbolic of mourning. That's what you wear to funerals. You wear bright colors, happy colors to weddings. And here comes Parson Hooper with his black veil on. Not a good omen, okay? So we get a description of the wedding, and we're told he comes in, and his stupid black veil, it makes the whole situation kind of somber. It adds, which the veil added a deeper gloom to the funeral, right? Are funerals supposed to be happy events? No. You're sad that the person has died. You're not necessarily, depending upon your spiritual belief system, if you have one, you're not necessarily sad for the person. What are you sad for? The people that are living. Okay? So, he walks in with his veil on, and we get this description of it was like dark clouds bubbling from under the veil and spreading out. Think of a big, massive storm coming in. That's the effect on the people there, okay? So, and we're told, and it dimmed the light of the candles. Now, literally, does his merely walking in the room make the candles suddenly, like if I turn the lights in here down to 25%? Probably not literally, but probably the effect of his coming in dressed this way makes everybody kind of go, ooh, okay? But the dimming of the candles, he's probably alluding to English custom or English customary belief. It was a practice Middle Ages up through the Renaissance, up through this time period, so if you only have candles or oil lamps to light a building and stuff, that at a wedding, when the candles are lit, that if there's a gust of wind and it blows the candles out, not necessarily all the candles, but when the bride and groom get married, they're probably each holding a candle. That's a custom, okay? And that candle would then be joined into one flame, symbolizing the two becoming one and all that kind of stuff. If one of those two candles that each one is holding, or the single candle that the two of them will light together, if any of those three blows out, that was taken to be an omen. This marriage isn't going to last. Not, because one's going to up and divorce the other one, because in the 1750s or 1780s, divorce really wasn't allowed in Puritan New England. No, it was one of them's going to die. Okay? So, we're told the bride and groom stand up in front. They hold hands. And we get a description of their hands. Her fingers are cold. Hold somebody's hand. Most of the time, the hand is what? It's warm. Why? Because we have a body temperature of 98.6. Now, if they've been out in the freezing cold for a while throwing snowballs or something, yeah, it's going to be cold. That's not this. Meanwhile, the groom's hand is what? Shaking. Okay. A little bit understandable. Marriage is a big deal. Is that why he's shaking? The bride is also pale, so that people in the congregation start to say, she looks like the dead girl that they buried earlier that day. Like she had come from her grave to be married. Okay? So Mr. Hooper then raises a glass of wine, because what do you have at weddings? Usually the father of the bride will do it first in what's in generally the reception. It's a toast. Or the best man. Okay? It's a toast to the bride and groom. So when you toast someone, do you just do this and then, drink? You lift that glass up. He lifts the glass up. Okay? And it could also be, a little side note, it could also be he's lifting that wine because he is then going to hold it for them both to take a drink of. Single cup kind of a thing, all right? He lifts the cup, and what does he see? He sees himself in his reflection in the wine glass. Look at this description. He raised a glass of wine to his lips. This is 334. Wishing happiness to the new married couple in a strain of mild pleasantry that ought to have brightened the features of the guests. He wishes them a happy marriage, long life, many children, all that kind of stuff. like a cheerful gleam from the hearth, at that instant catching a glimpse of his figure in the looking glass, the black veil involved his own spirit in the horror with which it overwhelmed all others. Notice it's a glimpse. What is a glimpse? If you glimpse something, how well do you see it? Not really. It's just there for a moment and gone. He doesn't look at himself and delve into that image. It's just instantaneous. And what does it do? It puts him in the shoes of all of his parishioners. How so? He sees himself as they see him. And what does it do to him? It terrifies him. He understands now the effect the veil has on them. Notice the horror with which it overwhelmed all others. He shakes, his lips grow white, he spills the wine, and rushes out of the building. Okay? Then what happens? The next day, what do the people of Milford do? They gossip. All they do is talk about crazy young, Parson Hooper. And we're told it was remarkable that of all the busybodies and impertinent people in the parish, okay, what's a busybody? Louder? Someone who's always moving. What else? Someone who doesn't mind their own damn business. A busybody is someone who, wants to always know what everybody else is doing. So we're told those people and impertinent people. What does it mean to be impertinent? You kind of don't respect your place. It means putting your nose where it doesn't belong, or saying things to others that one shouldn't say. That nobody goes to him and says, "What are you wearing the veil for, man? What's it mean?" Nobody does it. Okay? So people, talk and talk and talk, and finally we find out now, several pages in, Parson Hooper is engaged. His fiancée, Elizabeth, goes to him. He's at home, gets a knock on the door, and she comes in. And notice we're told on paragraph 25 on page 335. There was one person in the village unappalled by the awe with which the black veil had impressed all beside herself. She's the only one who is not, apparently, terrified by this. Does she know why he's wearing it? No, she doesn't. So she goes, knocks on his door, and comes in. And she looks at him. It's like she's sitting across from him. They're face to face, the veil in between. And she says, "There's nothing terrible in this piece of crepe, except that it hides a face which I am always glad to look upon. Come, good sir, let the sun shine from behind the cloud." That's a metaphor. Lift the veil. Show me the sun of your face, Lay aside your black veil, then tell me why you put it on. Notice the order. Lift it up, and then tell me why you wore it. She doesn't say, "Tell me why you put it on, then lift it up." He smiles. And notice, because we're told he smiles, she can see the smile, which is another indicator that the veil doesn't come down below his mouth. Yet every time when he talks, the veil moves, which is an indicator the veil has got to be coming over his mouth. Otherwise, it wouldn't move with his breath. There's a logical problem throughout the story. Okay? So Mr. Hooper says, "There is an hour to come when all of us shall cast aside our veils." Veil, veils. How many ways and how many different times is the word veil used in the story? At the funeral, what were we told? There is an hour to come when we will all cast aside our veils. What did the veil mean there? Whatever say that again? Kind of. It's the thing that separates this life from the afterlife. What's the thing that separates? Death. Okay? The encasing of the soul in the body, however you want to put it. So there's an hour to come when all of us shall cast aside our veils. Take it not amiss, beloved friend, if I wear this piece of crape till then. I'm going to wear this piece of black crape around my face until I die. Pretty clear, pretty straightforward. Can that be misunderstood? Not really. She says, your words are a mystery too. Take away the veil from them at least. Are they a mystery? Yes, they are. How so? Say that again?
I don't understand what he's saying when he's talking.
Okay. Did he say, I'm going to wear this till the moment of my death? No, he didn't. He said, I will keep this veil on until the moment when each of us has to cast aside our veil. So she says, your words are a mystery. Remember what I said the other day? A mystery is something that cannot be resolved, something that cannot be explained. So she's saying, explain the inexplicable. And he says, I will, as far as my vow may suffer me. What vow? Have we heard Parson Hooper utter a vow anywhere? Well, other than what he just told her, this has to stay on until that hour. Did we see him fall down on his knees, lift his head up to God and say, oh, great and mighty and terrible and dread being, I will wear this veil as a mark of blah, blah, blah. Until. Nope. So, he says this veil is a type and a symbol. Okay? And I'm bound to wear it ever, both in light, darkness, solitude, before the gaze of multitudes, as with strangers, so with my familiar friends. Okay. Everything after type and symbol is relatively unimportant. Those are the two key words in that passage. Because what do they mean? An 18th century audience, that is, people at the time of Parson Hooper and Elizabeth, would understand what those words mean because they would be used a lot in sermons. Okay? There is this phrase called biblical typology. Typology is also used in other things. I used to teach a course called the History of the English Language. And there's what's called linguistic typology, where you classify languages according to characteristics of those languages and such. Well, biblical typology is an interpretive stance, let's say, position, that says, look at characters in the Old Testament and see them as types, okay, that point to the New Testament. And what's meant by types there is look at them as figures that point to. Okay, generally when they point to the New Testament, they're pointing to the person of Jesus. So give me an example of somebody from the Old Testament that kind of is like a highway direction sign towards Jesus. You know, you watch old World War II movies or something like that, and somebody comes upon a crossroads, and there's a sign that says, Berlin, 300 kilometers. Rome, 700 kilometers. Okay? A type is like that kind of guidepost. It points to something. So give me somebody from the Old Testament who points to Jesus. Big names. I've got a student in one of my classes with this name. John the Baptist is the time of Jesus, but John the Baptist does point to Jesus. Isaiah, the prophet. Okay? Isaiah's words point to Jesus. I'm talking about a person. The person's behavior, actions, all that kind of stuff. Real big one. Moses. Why? What did Moses do? And how is it similar to what Jesus does for Christians? He led the Israelites out of the bondage of Egypt into the promised land. So how's that a type of Jesus? According to Christians, what does Jesus do? Jesus comes and saves his Israelites, his followers, from bondage, not of Egypt, but of sin, and leads them to the promised land, heaven. Okay? So there's Moses. Samson. How in the world is Samson? What does Samson do? Samson destroys the Philistine gods. Jesus is God. Pretty much takes care of the other gods. Samson frees the Israelites from the power of the Philistines. Jesus frees Christians from the power of sin and death. Does it mean Christians don't sin? Nope. But it means that doesn't define them. Does he save them from death? Yes and no. Still got to die, but it leads onward. Okay? So that's type. Symbol. What's a symbol? Everybody thinks, most people think, a symbol is merely something that points to something else. It's not. The two roots of that word mean to throw or cast together. The bowl part means like to roll a dice or throw a dice or some dice. Okay? The sim part means together or with. What are you doing? It's like casting a fishing hook out there, but notice that fishing hook is still what? It's connected via the line to the rod, which is connected to the person holding it. So it's both the thing itself and what it points to. So he says this veil is a type, it points to something, and a symbol. It is a veil, but it also represents something else. Okay? And then everything else I have to wear it no matter what. This dismal shade, dismal doesn't mean sad, it means darkened. So this shadowy shade, what? Must separate me from the world. Even you, Elizabeth, can never come behind it. That is, I'll never go, not even on their wedding night. Hello? Peekaboo. What grievous affliction hath befallen you? What have you done? Notice the way I put it, puts the blame where? What have you done? That's the way I put it. What does she say? What grievous affliction hath befallen you? He's not the agent there, he's the victim. What's happened? That you should thus darken your eyes forever. And there she puts the action on him. Why are you darkening your eyes? She's implying that he's willfully doing this. He wants to see darkly. Hooper, if it be a sign of mourning, I, perhaps like most other mortals, have sorrows dark enough to be typified by a black veil. If it's a sign of mourning, right? Because black is often indicative of mourning. You're going to see when we get to Hamlet, when the play opens, wears all black. And his mother asks why. Okay? Well, his father died less than 2 months ago. And she's remarried already to his uncle, her dead husband's brother. Incest, that's what that is, by the way. Okay? She says, if it be a sign of mourning, notice he doesn't say it is. But if it is, what? I've got sorrows in my background. Like most other people, that could be typified by something like this. Okay, how did she originally say what happened? What has befallen you? What does his response here mean? Come on, Elizabeth. Just think of your own history. Are you telling me you don't have things that have happened to you that are enough to make you weep if you stand there and think about it for a while? Every person in this room, we could come around, turn all the tables and chairs into a circle and have a, kumbaya moment, and we could just relate all that crap we've had to go through. All the bad stuff that has happened in our lives. He says, this is enough to symbolize those. But what if the world doesn't believe it is a type? That is, what if the world doesn't believe that it is merely symbolic of something? What if the world thinks, she goes on, that there may be whispers that you hide your face under the consciousness of secret sin? What if the world thinks you put this on because you have some deep, dark secret you're trying to hide? Like the guy in the little footnote, Mr. Moody of Troy, Maine. She says, for the sake of your office, that is, your position as preacher in this town, do away this scandal. Don't let people think this about you. In other words, stand up and defend yourself. And we're told the color rose into her cheek. She's blushing. Not because she's ashamed, she's angry. She knows he's a good man. People are going to start saying otherwise. If I hide my face for sorrow, so the first time, if I hide it for mourning, that's one thing. If I hide it for sorrow, there is cause enough. And if I cover it for secret sin, what mortal might not do the same? I don't know how familiar you are with the Gospels. There's a scene in one of the Gospels, I can't remember which one, where Jesus is sitting on the ground. Actually, he's standing, and then he sits on the ground. And these men, Pharisees, come to him, and they've got this woman in hand, and they throw her on the ground in front of them. Anybody know the scene I'm talking about? What happens?
They say that she was caught in the act of adultery and that the law caused her to be stoned.
And what did Jesus say?
Said, if any of you have not sinned, then you could throw a stone, and then they all walk away.
Exactly. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And you got to understand, stoning in ancient times wasn't just picking up little rocks that you could fit in your hand. We're talking bricks, big stones, so that when you hit someone, it breaks their head. All right? And what he does, before he even says it, and this is one of the most enigmatic passages in all of the Bible, he sits down and he writes in the sand or in the dirt with his finger. Nobody ever tells us what he writes. It's one of the most odd things, which is why some people have said, it's definitely real. No writer would come up with that on his or her own. Anyways, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. What do? Damn it, Jesus. Rabbi, the lost. Drop the rocks and go away. He tells her to go away, sin no more. Notice, if I cover it for secret sin, what mortal might not do the same? If they're going to suggest I've got some secret sin, what should they maybe do? Put up their own veils. Okay? And he resists all her entreaties. And then we're told, top of 336, though of a firmer character than his own, the tears rolled down her cheeks. What does that mean? A firmer character than his own? She's got a spine. This is a tough woman. You don't want to get on the wrong side of Elizabeth. And yet tears are rolling down her cheeks. In an instant, as it were, a new feeling took the place of sorrow. Her eyes were fixed insensibly on the black veil. What does that mean, insensibly? She's staring at him, but she's not consciously staring at him. She's not intending to stare at him. Her eyes are fixed. It's like she cannot draw her eyes away. She has no control at this point. And what happens? When, like a sudden twilight in the air, its terrors fell around her. What's that, like a sudden twilight in the air? The sun is still rising, right? What would our experience be if in the next 10 seconds the sky just suddenly went black?
Everybody looked confused.
You guys are stronger than I am. If the sky suddenly went black, I wouldn't be confused. I'd be scared, you know whatless. Why? There's no astronomical reason, there's no physical reason why the sky should suddenly go black. We know there is no full eclipse of the sun scheduled for today. That would mean something horrendous is about to happen. That's what happens to her. How so? Her eyes are focused on this thing without her will doing it. And what happens? It's like the veil drops over her. Remember what happened when the person who saw his reflection for a moment in the wine glass? He sees himself as all of them see him, and he's terrified. What has just happened? She sees his perspective. That there's darkness surrounding him. She feels what? The terror he apparently feels all the time. She rose to trembling, and he says, "Gotcha. And do you feel it then at last?" What is the it? Whatever the it is, it's caused by the veil. What's the it? This, I think, ultimately is what the short story is getting at. What does she feel at last? Well, okay, the terrors of the veil. What is that, though? It could be death. Okay? It definitely could be. It could be something else, though. Something that we experience here before death. Death, in one sense, is the ultimate example of this. Okay? She doesn't reply, and he says, "Be patient. Come on, stick with me, honey. Be mine," he said, "do not desert me, though this veil must be between us here on earth. Be mine, and hereafter," meaning when we're dead, meaning when we are really alive in heaven, there what? "There shall be no veil over my face, no darkness between our souls." Remember? Paul says, now we see but through a glass darkly, but then face to face, he says, then we will know as we are known. And that has a whole bunch of meanings. We will know others as they know us. And we will know ourselves. Paul's saying, in the quote-unquote resurrection, we're going to have perfect understanding of ourselves and each other. Not God, because God is infinite. When something that's finite can never understand them. Okay? No darkness between our souls. Maybe this is getting at what the it is. He's going to get at the it with his dying breaths in just a couple of moments. He says, do not leave me in this miserable obscurity forever. Why forever? If she leaves now, what's not going to happen in their lives? She's his fiancée. They're not going to get married. So why will that be leaving him forever? Part of the typical wedding vow, I pronounce thee man and wife, what? Till death do us end. In most Christian traditions, take that till death do us end just means, death here. But they are still joined in the beyond, in heaven. They're still married then. So forever means if you leave me now, we won't be together. We won't be joined in heaven. Lift the veil but once. Show me your face. Now just, whoop, that's it. It doesn't have to be long. And never, it cannot be. See ya. She leaves. Okay? So, from that time, no other attempts were made to ask him to remove his veil. And what happens? Time goes, time passes by. Parson Hooper becomes old. People respect him. People come from far and wide to listen to his sermons. Why? Because they want to be, so to speak, scared. They want to be convicted, as it were. What else are we told? Bottom of 336. With self-shudderings and outward terrors, he walked continually in the veil's shadow, groping darkly within his own soul, or gazing through a medium that saddened the whole world. Even the lawless wind, it was believed, respected his dreadful secret, never blew aside the veil. Okay? So, he's getting ready to die. He's on his deathbed. He's referred to as Venerable Father Hooper. What does venerable mean? Worthy of veneration. Veneration is not worship, but veneration is high praise. This guy is a model of perfect behavior, other than he wears his black veil. So he's lying there on his deathbed, and the minister of Westbury comes up to him and says, the moment of your release is at hand. Are you ready for the lifting of the veil that shuts in time from eternity? A different kind of veil. This one is the thing that, notice, shuts in time. Time is contained. And it's shut in from what? Eternity. Why? What does the word eternity literally mean? Outside of time. Okay? What is outside of time? God, first and foremost. Okay? And it's implied heaven is outside of time. And Father Hooper, kind of nods with his head. Then, wanting to make sure he's not misunderstood, he says, yea, my soul hath a patient weariness until that veil be lifted. Yeah, I'm tired. It's a patient weariness. What does it mean to be patient? 5-year-old kid, 3 weeks before Christmas, only child, so the parent spoils the child. Piles up presents galore underneath that Christmas tree. What is the child told? Be patient. What does that mean? You have to wait. Suffer, kid. That's what it means. Okay? He's suffering this. So the Reverend Clark says, that's the name of the minister of Westbury. Is it fitting that a man so given to prayer of such blameless example, holy in deed and thought, so far as mortal judgment may pronounce, is it fitting that a father in the church should leave a shadow on his memory that may seem to blacken a life so pure? In other words, if you die as you are now, people are always going to say, yeah, but he had that one sin that he wouldn't confess. He had that secret that was typified by the veil. Come on, lift the veil. Never, cried the veiled clergyman, on earth never. Dark old man. What does it mean by dark? Hidden, secretive, really means evil. Why? Because he's consciously, seemingly hiding something. With what horrible crime upon your soul are you now passing to the judgment? You really want to go to God having hoarded this, secret iniquity, to use the language from earlier in the story? And Parson Hooper, with his dying breath and strength, reaches his hands up and holds down the veil and says, why do you tremble at me alone? Why do you tremble in fear when you see me only? Why does he say that word alone? What's his point? Why don't you tremble when you look at each other? That's his point. And notice, he turns his face at each of the people in the room. Tremble also at each other. Have men avoided me, and women shown no pity, and children screamed and fled, just because of this stupid veil? What but the mystery which it obscurely typifies has made this piece of crepe so awful? He says, what has made this piece of cloth so terrible, other than the mystery it points to? And then he asks some questions. When the friend shows his inmost heart to his friend, what does that mean? We have a phrase, to bare your soul. Bare, B-A-R-E. It means to reveal it. So when the friend totally reveals everything about himself or herself to the friend, first part. When the lover shows his inmost heart to his beloved, or vice versa. When man does not vainly shrink from the eye of his Creator, loathsomely treasuring up the secret of his sin. When do those three things happen? Here, they don't. That's his point. No one totally reveals oneself to another person. No one totally reveals his heart to his or her lover. No one doesn't try to hide something from God. He says, but when these three things happen, then you can deem me a monster for the symbol beneath which I have lived and died. When those three things are done, then you can call me a monster. And then he gives us the kicker. I look around me, and lo, on every visage a black veil. Why? What is he saying? Yeah, keep going though. What's the black veil do between he and Elizabeth? It's right here, right? It separates them. He's saying we are all separated. We might think we're connected, but we're not. Why? Because none of us is ever fully open. None of us is ever fully honest with another person. We all, to use language other than a veil, we all wear masks. Okay? What's the mask I'm wearing right now? It's a different kind of mask, but it still applies. I'm wearing teacher mask. It's not the same mask I wear at home. At home I wear husband mask, father mask, etc. You're wearing student mask right now. Some of you at different times of the day, it's athlete mask or worker mask, etc. But they're all masks we put on and take off. But his point is, there's a mask we don't put on and take off. And that mask is that mask of essentially secrecy. There's some things I'm not going to tell anybody. And those things I try to keep even from What's his point? We gotta try. We gotta try to take the veils off. We have to try to really know. That's why he says to Elizabeth, you feel it now, don't you? What does he mean? Remember the description there was like a twilight suddenly falling around her. For a moment she understands, to use your word, the separation he feels. Like being totally alone. Totally. Not like I come into the classroom, nobody shows up. That kind of alone. Like waking up one day and nobody else is there but you. But just, imagine that for a moment. And you can't find him. There's nobody. Murfreesboro's empty. Nashville's empty. Tennessee, the world. You alone. That's how he feels. Okay? Is that what the meaning of the veil is? Not necessarily. Why? There are multiple meanings. Okay, we'll stop there. The quiz is live. It went live last night at 11:59. You have until, I think, Sunday night. This is the extra credit quiz. It's worth 10 points.